Welcome to the Creating Powerful Impact podcast, where we look at behind the scenes of why and how leaders are making an impact and how you can too. I'm Shay Wheat, the founder and CEO of Grace and Ease Productions and the host of Creating Powerful Impact podcast. We support 6, 7, and 8-figure speakers, coaches, and expert thought leaders in creating powerful and profitable live and virtual live events. Our clients have made over $25 million in revenue, gained over 3,700 new clients, and changed the lives of over 29,000 attendees with events as few as 50 people and over 4,000 in attendance. So stick around to the end of the show where we'll reveal how you can be a next guest in just 15 to 20 minutes. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Creating Powerful Impact. I'm so thrilled to bring you my next guest. We have on the line with us the amazing, the talented, the fabulous Heather Dominick. And if you haven't met Heather yet, Heather is the creator of the 2014 Stevie Award-winning virtual event, A Course in Business Miracles, 21-day discovery series that attracted close to, get this, 6,000 official registrants from all around the world, including Iceland, Nigeria, Russia, Asia, South America, Australia, Europe, and of course, the United States. So I'm very excited to bring her to you today. We're going to chat about something that I think you probably have not quite heard about, but I will let her share a little bit more details as we dive into today's call. But please welcome Heather Dominick. Hi, Heather.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too, because you have a topic that I feel people may not necessarily know what it means to be highly sensitive. And so I definitely want to make sure that we dive into what does that mean? What does it look like? How do highly sensitive entrepreneurs or leaders manage overwhelm and just kind of move through their day, as well as kind of get into the fun behind the scenes of what we do here on Creating Powerful Impact of how do we scale and how do we grow and how do we actually use, I'm sure there's probably ways that we can connect being highly sensitive to growing and scaling your businesses as well. Would you say?
Absolutely. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. Dive into all of it.
I love it. All right. Well, let's get going. Would you explain to our audience just what does it actually mean to be highly sensitive?
Sure, absolutely. Great place to start. So first of all, the term highly sensitive is definitely not coined by me. The term comes out of research that really started in the mid-1990s, and especially with founding researcher Dr. Elaine Aron, who is the author of the book, The Highly Sensitive Person. And out of this research, what has been shown is that there are 20% of us born into the world who are highly sensitive. And what that means is that your nervous system is wired to take in stimulation at a much higher degree than someone who is not highly sensitive. So that stimulation can be anything from like sights and smells and sounds and also, physical touch, but also information and energy. And what the research also shows is that if a person is either unaware or uninformed or ill-equipped to work with their nervous system, they can find the world extremely challenging. You can just kind of imagine, right? If everything is super stimulating, it definitely affects your process. And then the research also shows that as you learn to really work with your nervous system, you have access to some very, very unique strengths that can really serve and support you and how you're here to play a very significant role in the world. And that's a lot of where my work comes in with highly sensitive entrepreneurs and highly sensitive leaders.
Got it. Okay. So yes, I could see that if you're highly sensitive and you may not necessarily realize it, you've all these stimulants coming at you and you're like, I just can't manage all of it at the same time. And you just feel extremely overwhelmed, I would assume.
That's right. And what I like to say is overwhelmed, not in the Marie Claire, take a free quiz, multitasking to-do list overwhelm, right? Which we all experience, but a literal, visceral system overload overwhelm, which is a different experience of overwhelm that really needs to, again, be learned in terms of how to effectively manage. Otherwise, it can just, completely snowball your work, your life, your relationships, you name it.
Now, you were saying that you didn't necessarily coin this phrase, and your genius is more in the business miracles. How does that actually relate to one another?
Yes, I so appreciate that question. So first of all, when I started my self-employment career, which actually this year of 2023 marks 20 years of being self-employed.
Go on. Well, we're going to dive into that.
Right. When I first started off being self-employed, I did not know that I was a highly sensitive person, and I didn't have any experience with business. I actually came from the world of education. I was a high school English and drama teacher for 8 years as my first career. And so I just dove in, just full feet first into the world of self-employment. And I took all of the courses and I worked with all of the coaches and I went to all of the trainings and, really worked so hard to put my business into a financially quote unquote successful place. Mm-hmm. And that was about 8 years in when my business crossed the 7-figure mark for the first time. And I would love to say like, oh, and then, like unicorns, like did my grocery shopping for me and balloons fell from the sky and, fairies made the bed and everything was amazing. And that is not what happened. It was actually the exact opposite. I was massively overwhelmed. I was overworked. I was overexhausted and really, really questioning like everything that I was doing. I was like, I don't know if this is what it is to be quote unquote successful. I'm not sure this is for me. And if this isn't for me, then what am I, it was a definite, in hindsight, dark night of the soul. And I took, I withdrew from everything except continuing to just serve, with love, the clients that I was working with at the time. And through that period, I was introduced to Dr. Elaine Aron, and I learned what it meant to be highly sensitive. And my first response was like, oh my God, no, no, I cannot believe this is like one more thing that I have to manage. I have to overcome. But the more that I went into the work, I came to understand of this now makes sense. This makes sense of why these things that I was learning in all of these courses and with all these coaches and trainers, why it always seemed to feel that much more difficult for me or take so much more out of me than, my fellow course attendees or, coaching colleagues or what have you. And the more I began to work with that, I started to realize oh, okay, because I'm highly sensitive, I just have to go about things differently. I have to approach marketing differently. I have to approach selling differently. I have to approach operations differently. And this is where the business miracles piece comes in. And that piece is that I have been a student of the psychological and spiritual curriculum of A Course in Miracles since I was a teenager. And the teaching within that curriculum is that a miracle is a shift in perception. So knowing that and having used the course to help and support me through, a lot of trauma at a young age, including the death of my mother when I was 14, I began to really put the two together. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is what it's going to take for me to be able to be successfully self-employed. It's going to take a shift in perception. The looking at marketing differently, the looking at selling differently, the looking at operations differently. Oh, this is going to take a business miracle. Now, I've told this story so many times, but even just retelling it now, I just got chills because it was like that pivotal of a moment for me. And it really just changed everything. And that's how a Business Miracles or a Course in Business Miracles really dovetails with all of the work that we do in the highly sensitive leadership training programs.
Wow, there was so much in there that I want to unpack and go back in through.
Mm-hmm.
So one, congratulations, 20 years in business.
Thank
Two,
you.
8 years in, hit 7 figures and realized that it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
And having the realization that the shift in the perception deserves to happen. And knowing more of who you are and how you navigate the world would support that. And that's kind of how this new life's work, would you say, kind of came into play for you? And finding, more. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So changing for myself first, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, since early years, I've always believed that your ideal client is a version of you. So
Mm-hmm.
as I started to make changes for myself in my business, I just kind of started polling the clients that I was working with, and all of them highly sensitive. Mm-hmm. And what was really significant was that when I first started talking to my clients about being highly sensitive, their first reaction was exactly similar to my first reaction, which is, I don't want this. I don't want this label. This means that I'm weak. This means that I'm less than. And that really was the light bulb moment for me, because it was like, no, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you are meant to do things differently. And if you're willing to do it differently, then a lot of the struggle that I definitely experienced, as well as I coached so many of my clients at that time with, those struggles are going to shift and change. It doesn't have to feel that hard, and it doesn't need to kill you being self-employed. It doesn't need to break your back. But you are going to need to have to massively activate some courage to be willing to do things differently.
Yeah. So if we could look at, the first 8 years in business, how were you necessarily doing business at that time? And then when you had the aha moment and the realization of you're highly sensitive, what did you do? How was marketing before and how was marketing now? Can you share some of those things that might have those light bulb moments for our audience?
For sure. So marketing, and again, close to 20 years ago, right? So there was a lot that was quote unquote new in the industry that is not new anymore, but kind of like these a little bit shiny in terms of these formulas, online launches, right? Really setting things up to be evergreen and creating massive amounts of emails, learning how to use social media. I mean, Facebook didn't exist when I started my business, WTF, right? And we've already moved so far beyond Facebook. So it was a lot of that, churning, right? Churning out content, pushing, absolutely. And again, massive launches and all about the numbers and the more people and more sales and a real, I like to refer to it as last century mentality, right? Which is kind of like a leftover that was very, for lack of a better way of saying it, very masculine. And a lot of the teachers, honestly, at that time, were men who were, teaching online sales, for example, or teaching how to, set up coaching programs, and hard days, right? And a real mindset of you got to put in the sweat, you got to put in the tears. You got to get tough skin. And if you don't, then you should just, leave the business because you're not going to be able to make it. And if you aren't making this amount of money, you can't consider yourself successful. You might as well just throw in the towel. What are you doing? A hobby? Language such as, play a bigger game, you got to get out there. You got to be seen more. I mean, just drive, 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 drive. Now, there isn't anything wrong with any of that, even if you heard something in my tone that might have implied so. There isn't anything wrong with that if that way really works for you. If you get up in the morning and you're so super excited to like crank out like 10 emails and put together an entire launch series, if that like brings you joy, great, do that. If it doesn't, then that's a place to do some inquiry and check in. So I don't do any of those things anymore, right? So I really look to like, what are my highly sensitive strengths? And I've identified top 12 strengths for those of us who are highly sensitive, and how to use those strengths in being self-employed. So just really briefly, a lot of what we do well as highly sensitives is we make really genuine, deep connections with people. It happens very naturally for us. Okay, so how do I apply that to marketing? Well, I'm sitting here having this amazing conversation with you. You're in California, I'm in New York. I didn't need to get all dressed up. I didn't need to go to like a stuffy room for a networking event. I'm totally in my zone. I'm totally in my strengths. Oh, okay. Well, how does something like that then apply to selling? Oh, what if we just remove the whole fear factor, that was really being driven, especially in the early aughts. And what if we make it about human connection instead, right? Yep. These are just some examples. I could go on and on. And it looks different for each of the highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders who are in the Business Miracles community. We have all kinds of businesses represented, including those that one would think of as more traditional businesses, like insurance brokers or real estate brokers or dentists and doctors. Yet you can take the approach of what it means to have highly sensitive entrepreneurial success and then adjust and adapt it for each individual. And that's what's really key. So the only thing about formulaic marketing, in my opinion, that works is for the person who's selling it. So there are absolutely like kind of frames, right, or points that are helpful so that the wheel doesn't need to be recreated, but it really does require the willingness to kind of check in and be like, wait, do all pieces of this formula, are they absolutely necessary? Are they a real match for me? And maybe what is meant to be adapted or adjusted, right? Formulas work because formulas are easy to sell.
Makes sense. Now, you had mentioned there's, 12 some odd points, strengths, so to speak, for somebody that is highly sensitive. Do you have like a top 3 or something that would make one as an excellent entrepreneur or leader as a highly sensitive person?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say the top is intuition.
Okay.
Now, like everyone, whether you're highly sensitive or not, has access to intuition. It just makes sense that if you're highly sensitive and you're taking in stimulation at a higher degree, that with the training of your nervous system, you will have a greater further access to intuition. And then how to be able to use that intuition in support of business growth. So definitely intuition. And then I would say also empathy is one of our top 12 strengths. And that really can mark success for an entrepreneur as well as a leader in any regard when you know how to access and utilize that empathy effectively. And then also we are extremely deep thinkers. That's another strength. We're also deep feelers and we're deep listeners. So if I had to move one of those into the top 3, I would say deep listener is really, really valuable when it comes to being a service-based entrepreneur and, again, a leader in any regard.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The more you listen, the more information you're gaining, and then being able to then just turn around and be like, okay, this is how I can be of service to you, right?
Yes.
It's like, what do you need? How can I show up for you? Fantastic. Here we go, right? a little bit like the market research, like you did with polling your audience, going, oh yeah, they're a lot like me. So I think that's fantastic. I wanted to touch base a little bit on, maybe somebody's listening to this going, I don't know if I'm necessarily a highly sensitive person. Do I need to have highly sensitive people on my team? Or if I'm not, does that make me not a good leader? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
I so appreciate that question. I will say, whether you like it or not, there's a highly sensitive person somewhere in your life. Right? We are 20% of the population. So they're in your family, they're in your friend circle, they're in your team, they're on your staff. They might not know that they're highly sensitive. They might be trying to hide that they're highly sensitive, which is very, very common. Or they might, not really know how to utilize their strengths. But again, guaranteed there's someone that who's highly sensitive. And so if you're interested in really being an effective leader, in my opinion, in this century that we now live in and these exceptional times that we continue to make our way through, it is of value to understand the different strength elements of the people who surround you, and to really be able to maximize those strengths rather than try to minimize individuality and believe that everyone needs to be, some form of a version of or minion of you. So that's what I would say. They're there. So find out who they are.
and I just kind of had like a bit of an aha moment myself going, you have a gift. You've got a quiz that people can take. And I'm thinking, whether or not you feel yourself being highly sensitive, one, I think it's good for you to take it. Two, if you're a leader in your own corporation or your own business or in any type of leadership, I think it would be good to have your team also take this quiz. So then you have a better understanding of how to engage with highly sensitive people and pull out the best in them, right?
I really agree with that. Absolutely. Or even just, again, if you don't think you're highly sensitive, but still go ahead and take the quiz, because it'll just really show you, so much more about the possibility of those who are highly sensitive. And you might be able to start to identify for yourself, like, oh yeah, wow, like that actually sounds like that person in my life. I wonder my sister's
what? Yeah, no wonder my sister's like that.
Right?
But I think it allows us to engage and interact with people a little bit differently. It's like, oh, okay, go back to love languages, for instance, right? It's like, oh, okay, that's how you express love. I now understand you a little bit better. Same thing for here in the quiz. I think it's like, oh, okay, that's why you show up this way. Or it might even be able to be a good idea to know, okay, why is it showing up maybe a shadow side of, I'm hiding it, being highly sensitive, and it's showing up this way because I'm not tapping into that strength.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right. So what's the best way for them to pick up the quiz?
For sure. You can find that at www.hsequiz.com. So hsequiz.com. And I always like to say it's actually really not a quiz, because you don't really like pass or fail, right? But like, it's really more of an assessment, but HSE quiz is an easier URL. So you'll just find out more about yourself, like we've been saying. And when you complete the quiz, you'll find out if you're somewhat highly sensitive, if you're super highly sensitive, or if you're like me and you're super uber highly sensitive. And then you'll receive what we like to refer to as a success guide that will match you somewhat super or super uber, and you can start working with that, and again, even if you are somewhat, then the success guide you receive will help you just understand more of perhaps those in your life, in your work, in your business, who perhaps are more highly sensitive.
I'm very excited to take it. I'm interested to see where I'm at, and maybe some shadow sides that have come up for me, what I've tapped into, what I've kind of put a little stopper on, just being in business. And so I'm really excited to see that. But before we kind of wrap up here, I want to hear a little bit about, what's coming up for you next. How are you looking to continue to grow and scale and leverage your company and your team and support more people and creating more impact in the world?
Yes. Thank you so much for that beautiful question. So I just published a book at the end of last year. Thank you very much. And I'm really, really excited about it. And I would say what I'm most excited about is, as we've been talking about, I've been doing this work for a really long time and have always found it kind of daunting to well, how do I put this into a in your hands, where to start? And I feel so proud, as well as have already just received such positive feedback of how the book has been so helpfully influential and impactful for those who are reading it and learning about themselves for the first time in this way. And that is very, very exciting to me.
Yay. And can people pick that up now or almost soon?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Yep, it's available. It's available on my website. You can also find it at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Okay. And I can go ahead and give the title if you want, or we can hold off.
Yeah. How can people find it? Absolutely.
For sure. So you can find that at www.differentthebook.com. differentthebook.com.
I love it. Okay. So many resources have come out of today. It just flew by.
It did, didn't it? It's like,
oh my God, it flew by. So I guess where we'll go next is, is there any final thoughts or little nuggets that you want to go ahead and leave our audience with as they're going to go and check out the book and check out the quiz? How can they start moving forward? What kind of nuggets do you have to leave them with?
I would say let me leave you with this nugget would be that if, as you've been listening, you have a sense that you might be highly sensitive, to really know that there's nothing wrong with you and there's nothing shameful about being highly sensitive, and that it doesn't need to work against you with whatever it is that you feel called to create in the world. But actually, as you learn to work with your nervous system, it will allow that calling to come into fruition that much more easily and smoothly, for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us today, Heather. I'm excited. Everybody go pick up the book and take the assessment. And until next time, we look forward to hearing more and more of you creating powerful impact in the world. Until then, take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Creating Powerful Impact podcast. If you are a successful coach, speaker, author, or thought leader who would like to be on this program, simply visit creatingpowerfulimpact.com/guest. If you are someone who got something out of this interview, would you please do me a favor and share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on your socials. Also, if you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Creating Powerful Impact. I love seeing all of your posts and great guest selections. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they really mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more about us? Head on over to our website, graceandeaseproductions.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for Grace and Ease Productions on your favorite platform. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.